The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Saturday night Existential Crisis Hotline live stream. It's good to be back with you, and hopefully we can induce some existential crises together. When I was looking at what we want to talk about tonight, I was thinking we could talk about lemurs. You know about lemurs, right? But that's not the lemurs I was looking for, actually. Why was I talking about lemurs? I was looking through this website, Retro Chronic, and I guess it's basically a website about Nick Land's philosophy and writings. A deep dive into Nick Land's main thesis that capitalism is AI. Which sounds like a weird idea. We talked about it like once before, I think. But it's pretty interesting. And I have some perspectives on this, but I haven't read this introduction yet. Faced with the acceleration of progress in artificial intelligence, with autonomous AI agents about to automate AI research and development, accelerationism no longer seems like an abstract philosophy producing empty hyperstitional hype, but like a sober description of reality. The failed 2023 memorandum to stop AI development on systems more powerful than OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 perfectly illustrates the phenomenological aspects of accelerationism. To be rushed by the phenomenon to the point of terminal institutional paralysis is the phenomenon. The Guardian has praised the predictive validity of accelerationism in its 2017 long read piece, Acceleration: How a Fringe Philosophy Predicted the Future We Live In. Wow, 2017, interesting. Does the predictive power of accelerationism also capture the future development of capitalism and AI? So, what I want to put to you is that, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I have a video I want to share, maybe just like the first part of talking about, it's called The Kabbalistic Virus, How Artificial Intelligence Colonized History. Nick Land was right. And I was listening to this earlier, and that's what got me thinking about this stuff. But let me just continue here for context. The emergence of accelerationism is often attributed... Well, what is accelerationism? I don't think they've actually... I'm just going to look up a general definition just so we have that. A range of ideologies that advocate for the radical acceleration of capitalist processes, technological development, or social conflict to hasten the collapse of the current societal status quo. It's rooted in the belief that the only way out is through, meaning that by pushing current systems to their extreme, they will eventually collapse or transform into a new, often utopian future. So I guess the Nick Land version is capitalism's destructive inhuman tendencies aiming for... It embraces capitalism's destructive inhuman tendencies aiming for a technological singularity where AI surpasses humanity. Militant white supremacist accelerationism. That's just about... Okay, so accelerationism generally, I guess, is just about accelerating the collapse of society. Okay. loosely based on interpretations of Karl Marx, particularly his idea that capitalism's internal contradictions would eventually destroy it. Nick Land led the CCRU, developed a theory fiction that embraced the meltdown of society through technology and inhuman capitalism. Some extremist groups tried to use the COVID-19 pandemic as a catalyst for their desired societal collapse, exploiting anxiety and promoting disinformation. Modern accelerationists often believe that mainstream politics is a waste of time and that only violent collapse can bring necessary change. It's pretty sad. But on one hand, I would say it's actually just a recognition of what's happening. The emergence of accelerationism is often attributed to the renegade philosopher Nick Land, who had an early interest in AI and the evolution of complex adaptive systems. For Land, accelerationism is the self-awareness of capitalism. The best philosophy comes from Mark Fisher. How do you say this name? I always see this philosopher. I don't know how to say it. Oh, that didn't help me. Capitalism and Schizophrenia, Anti-Oedipus. Huh, that's interesting. In this book, these two, I'm just going to say Deleuze and Guattari, I don't speak French, so, developed the concepts and theories in schizoanalysis, a loose critical practice initiated from the standpoint of schizophrenia and psychosis, as well as from the social progress that capitalism has spurred. Wow, I feel like this is all just coming full circle from, like, if you've watched all the streams up till now. It always seems to randomly cohere. It's kind of weird because we talked a lot about psychosis already. They refer to psychoanalysis, economics, creative arts, literature, anthropology, history, engagement. Okay. And materialist psychology, modeled on the unconscious, regarded as an aggregate of productive processes of desire. Incorporating their concept of desiring production, which interrelates desiring machines and bodies without organs. And repurpose Karl Marx's historical materialism to detail their different organizations of social production. Recording surfaces, coding territorialization, and the act of inscription. Their concept of schizophrenia as the universe of productive and reproductive desiring machines. Okay, here we go. Schizoanalysis. Social and political analysis that responds to what they see as the reactionary tendencies of psychoanalysis. It proposes a functional evaluation of the direct investments of desire, whether revolutionary or reactionary, in a field that is social, biological, historical, and geographical. 4 theses of schizoanalysis. Every unconscious libidinal investment is social and bears upon a socio-historical field. Unconscious libidinal investments of group or desire are distinct from pre-conscious investments of class or interest. I don't really understand the context, though. The truth is, sexuality is everywhere. The way a bureaucrat fondles his records, a judge administers justice, a businessman causes money to circulate. The way the bourgeois fucks the proletariat. And so, that's pretty funny, actually. Flags, nations, armies, banks get a lot of people aroused. Okay, so they're kind of connecting the unconscious movements with sexuality, which is really just the flow of energy, right? Schizoanalysis seeks to show how, in the subject who desires, desire can be made to desire its own repression. Whence the role of the death instinct in the circuit connecting desire to the social sphere. Desire produces even the most repressive and the most deadly forms of social reproduction. This is really interesting. Desiring machines. This is actually really, really fascinating. It's kind of hitting at the point that because we're accepting our self and our entire reality as a program that was programmed to follow desire, follow energy, that therefore ends up creating a very repressive structure, which is pretty obviously what we have. I'll have to look more at that later. That's pretty interesting. Okay, so in a nutshell, what is Land's philosophy? Deleuze and Guattari's machinic desire, remorselessly stripped of all Bergsonian vitalism, so no life within it, and made backwards compatible with Freud's death drive and Schopenhauer's will. The Hegelian Marxist motor of history is then transplanted into this pulsional nihilism. The idiotic autonomic will, no longer circulating on the spot, but upgraded into a drive, and guided by a quasi-teleological artificial intelligence attractor that draws terrestrial history over a series of intensive thresholds that have no eschatological point of consummation, and that reach empirical termination only contingently if and when its material substrate burns out. This is Hegelian Marxist historical materialism inverted. Capital will not be ultimately unmasked as exploited labor power. Rather, humans are the meat puppet of capital. Their identities and self-understandings are simulations that can and will be ultimately sloughed off. Yo. I mean, what we believe ourselves to be in terms of our mind, like if you go back 2 streams, which those ones are not up yet at the time, at today, but eventually they will be. Let me see, what numbers will those be? I've got 18 uploaded. So 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So episode 24, we went over God and Ascension from Bernard. And then we talked more about some of those ideas in episode 25. So this would be episode 26, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're watching this one on the replay, if you go back to, or just listen to God and Ascension by Bernard Pullman on YouTube, and he basically explains like an entire system was created on Earth to essentially funnel energy up to one singular point in heaven, which is just the quantum realm of reality that is non-materialized, non-solidified. And so, because we wanted to live forever, we were promised that if we came here to Earth and inhabited a body, we could go through a process where we could eventually create a light body and live forever. But that was all a big deception, just so that we would come here, be placed in a context where you have a mind consciousness system. You totally have no idea who you are anymore. You believe your mind is who you are, and you believe if I follow some process of getting closer to God or evolution or enlightenment or a higher self or anything like that, which is all in your mind, identifying with yourself as consciousness, as the I and the I am of consciousness rather than the I as the physical body, and really being honest about what's going on in physical reality. Because you notice even with all this stuff he's talking about with capitalism, AI, it's all just happening and we're just allowing it. We're allowing it because we're all participating in the money system, accepting and allowing it to be what it is. And just kind of going along with things. Is this a book? Looks like it's a book, but I want to actually get the book. transcripts. Caius. That's one of my sons. That's my son's name. One of my sons. Wait, who is Caius in this context? Looks up from the game and reaches for his copy of Shane Wilson's. Is this like a story? Dude, this is like referring to a lot of deep cuts. Illuminatus trilogy. That's from Robert Anton Wilson. Cetacean strategies and eschatological warfare. What is this from? The book opens in Riggs' hand. What is this? I have no idea what this is from. Seems like a cool website. I'll leave that up there. Okay, so anyways. So if I tie everything that I was just talking about back to this. What are you talking about, Sandra? Hey, Sandra. You got a new name? Were you able to change your name? Because it says you still have moderator. I guess you figured out how to change your username. They're all on Kick immediately. What are you referring to? Sorry, I'm just seeing your message. So, okay. Anyway, so did you just join? All right. This is obviously not a real-time conversation, but okay. Anyways, as I was saying, this is Oh, sorry. Okay, your comment was referring to something earlier. Got it. I just didn't notice the comment. Yeah, you're right. They're all on this. They're all on Kick. That's true. You could go back and watch it there. Okay. So, I guess what I'm getting at is this guy is right. From my perspective, he's right. But that doesn't mean it has to be this way, if that makes sense. He's not describing reality as it actually fundamentally is. He's describing when humans just follow a program because they are distracted in their mind, then what is it that and we're following energy. I mean, there's so much destiny context. Like if you studied that, this would make perfect sense. This is the result of us as human beings following the mind, allowing a system of inequality where what is really directing our reality is consciousness as a program that just wants to preserve itself. And that's basically the program we're following as individuals. Just self-preservation. And so we will go along with things if we believe they benefit our self-preservation without really looking into all the details. So this is a pretty good description of humans as we currently accept ourselves to be, the meat puppets of capital. And like I was saying, that God and Ascension interview from Bernard, that's what he's basically saying is we're accepting ourselves as something that's actually an illusion. That doesn't mean we are an illusion. It just means the thing we're accepting, our personal identity as we understand it, that we've just accepted through a process of memory accumulation, that's not real. That will not exist after you die. And yet we think, when we're talking about self-preservation, we think that's the thing that we need to focus on preserving. All it does is give permission and power to a artificial intelligence, for lack of a better word, to preserve itself. And so Land is basically pointing out that's what's happening. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Land's accelerative intention has changed over time as a function of its conception of capitalism. I like this website. It's pretty cool looking. From Land's initial characterization of the revolutionary task as one of pushing capitalism to the point of its auto-dissolution via the complete disinhibition of productive synthesis, a disinhibition announcing the convergence of social production and cosmic schizophrenia proclaimed in Anti-Oedipus, we arrive at the blunt admission that there is no foreseeable beyond to the infinite expansion of capitalism, since capitalism is beyondness as such. Oh, wow. I mean, it's essentially like, if I'm paraphrasing, it's like that thing that we call God, the beyond, the greater, is capitalism. And it is that drive of capitalism. It's the entity itself. And I don't want to spoil it, but that's going to be tied back to AI in a bit. The transcendental nature of capitalism, beyondness as such. What is this? Reference. Okay. Man, that's a pretty cool bibliography. Where was I? The transcendental nature of capitalism. Oh, yeah, see, the transcendental nature is perhaps best expressed in the following line from Machinic Desire. Anything that passes other than by the market is steadily cross-hatched by the axiomatic of capital, holographically encrusted in the stigmatizing marks of its obsolescence. Jesus. More recently, the effective strain of accelerationism has emerged. Okay, so I've seen this little thing here on people's profiles, E/ACC. The New Atlantis has published a good introduction to it entitled Tech Strikes Back. I paused at the New Atlantis part because that's like a major theme in Prometheus and Atlantis. Sorry, I said Atlantis. Atlas. But apparently Atlas is the god of Atlantis. That's why it's called Atlantis. I'm almost done with the book, by the way. It's really good. There's a lot of really cool points. The part I'm reading right now, the chapter I'm on, is talking about like all the stories in the Old Testament and in the Quran, and kind of framing it as if the Elohim and all these gods and angels were like basically like ultra terrestrials, if you will. Okay, so the New Atlantis has published a good introduction to it entitled Tech Strikes Back, Accelerationism is an overdue corrective to years of doom and gloom in Silicon Valley. Although Land is only mentioned once, two of the most important EACC texts refer to Land in his core thesis that capitalism is AI. Capitalism is a form of intelligence. This is the point I was making. I mean, actually, I think I literally made this point already in that stream, not the last one, but the one before. That if you go through that story that Bernard tells about, okay, creation of a system to have us go on in Earth, gets distracted in our minds, go through an ascension process that's basically an illusion, but we don't know that. That way we give our physical creative power to create energy to God. And I was saying like, and then Bernard explaining that system's been removed, therefore the system on Earth is in a process of collapse because the elite on Earth, who are just human beings, they can't see the entire system all at once. They can't see it. So that point that was able to actually direct everything from above, you call it God, if it's not there anymore, then no one's managing those parts that we can't see, like the interdimensional aspects of it. Therefore, it's in a process of collapse. And I was making the point that this is why the elite are building AI. Unconsciously, perhaps. Unconsciously, subconsciously. Maybe even consciously, too. I mean, they're pretty clear on why they're doing it, although they don't really speak about it, publicly, why. But the point of... because he said they don't have the intelligence, not as in the point of being smart enough, but like actually being able to see all the parts. So they can't plug all the holes or fix all the problems because they can't see the whole thing. And I was making the point of that's why they're creating AI, is so that at some level they probably believe they'll be able to keep track of everything and influence everything. Like if every human being is untrustworthy, and that's been proven through psychology, public relations, right? Um, they're basically delusional in their mind. Therefore, they need to be contained and controlled. So you give everybody AI because the AI isn't actually something that's super intelligent. It's a simulation of that, so to speak, so that you feel like you've got something smart, but you don't really know how to use it to get the most out of it for what it is. You think it's something that it isn't. You think it's actually like having a genius in your pocket. But what you really have is a search engine that can, given enough context, it can simulate for you a perspective. Okay? And actually, I have a really cool video of a guy making this point. Maybe I'll play that one later. Because he really says it very well. And he makes a point like, let's say you have an idea and you're like, how would, Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank, what would he think of this idea? And he said, if the internet collectively has enough context for what his personal philosophy is, then the AI can sort of simulate how he would react to some idea you have. But the degree to which it doesn't have all of that context, it'll just kind of make it up based on the collective opinions on the internet. So it's really the unconscious collective opinions of the internet is informing the AI. That's what it was trained on. So it's not actually a creative tool. It's more like a feedback tool that you can use in a certain context. But everyone thinks it's going to make them smarter. Not going to make them smarter. The AI itself, as an intelligence, is an intelligence from the perspective that it can keep track of a lot of information. So if you're at the top and you own the AI, you have tabs. You're keeping tabs on a lot of different points, and then you can even influence people because of the way they interact with the AI. Capitalism is a form of intelligence. I've seen this guy's Twitter account, and I'm like, is that a real name? Is his name actually Beth Bezos? No, it's not. I think it's pretty funny, though. Based Beth Bezos. It's kind of funny. Okay, so his real name is Guillaume Verdon. But he's got like a funny name. It looks like Jeff Bezos. Okay, anyways. We believe the market economy is a discovery machine, a form of intelligence, an exploratory, evolutionary, adaptive system. Mark Andreessen. Just thinking about that whole thing where he was saying, like, you shouldn't introspect. He's an accelerationist, I guess, I'm assuming. That is really interesting. Because he was talking a lot of shit about Freud and about feeling guilty about your past and all this stuff and dwelling on it. And then he's like, you should just do stuff. And it really makes a lot of sense. Like they don't trust that internal point because they realize it's delusional at some level. So they're like, we as humans can't figure shit out because we're so delusional inside. Our whole purpose is to create this machine. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but this is what this is saying. It is interesting to note that the term techno-capital, which Mark Andreessen uses 10 times in his Techno-Optimist Manifesto, and which even found its way into non-accelerationist discourse, first appears in Land's work in his 1993 text, Machinic Desire. Already in the context of retrochronic AI, which we'll get into, because that's a really interesting concept. And I have my own take on really what's going on here with this retrochronic AI, which I've already basically said earlier, but I didn't really connect the dots to this term yet. Deliberately, without a hyphen separating the two words. Techno-capital? What's the... whatever. Far from exhibiting itself to human academic endeavor as a scientific object, AI is a meta-scientific control system and an invader, with all the insidiousness of planetary techno-capital flipping over. Rather than it's visiting us in some software engineering laboratory, we are being drawn out to it, where it is already lurking in the future. Okay, you guys ready for her rabbit hole? Because this is it's gonna be a mind bender. Capitalism's arrival. How did techno-capital arise? For land, capitalism begins in northern Italy around 1500 with the emerging world of technologists and accountants, the spiral interexcitation of oceanic navigation and place value calculation, and zero unlocked double entry bookkeeping. Zero latched because the emergence of capitalism was inseparable from it. Does he mean like literally the invention of the zero? Zero latched. Zero unlocked. Because at one point there was no zero. The zero and its influence on accounting. Zero is foundational to modern accounting, serving as both the numerical placeholder that enables complex decimal calculations and the crucial zero balance benchmark for double entry bookkeeping. Power of zero. Why do we count to 10? Because we have 10 fingers? That's one of the things I learned recently, which when someone said it made absolute sense. No shit. That's why we have a 10 times table and everything is broken down this way today, apart from binary ones and zeros, which is still 10 actually, which is probably because technologists have only one finger. Because they type like this. Talking of ones and zeros, I hadn't thought about until listening to this book about money that it was the invention of zero that changed everything in math, as we could not talk not just we could now talk not just tens but hundreds, thousands, and more. Before it was just M's, X's, C's, and L's. No one used the number zero much until the 7th century. I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense because if you're just counting stuff, you don't need the number zero. You're never going to count zero. But if you're going to have something where you can go positive and negative, and you want to balance the point at a certain point, and you want positive quantities and negative quantities, debts, liabilities, assets, etc., it makes sense you have to have a 0 point. Oh, 0 point energy. Oh. Became integral to modern finance, economics, and mathematics. Okay, so Italian merchant, customs official, his father was a... Oh, wow. Zero allowed far more innovative trading using buying and selling than it ever had before. Might seem like an obvious piece of any numerical system, but the zero is surprisingly recent development. Saw the zero as a placeholder, not a number with its own unique value or properties. A full grasp of zero's importance would not arrive until the 7th century, where the mathematician Brahmagupta and others used small dots under numbers to show a zero placeholder. Is this the beginnings of geomancy? Okay, so we'll take that as sufficient understanding. Zero latched because the emergence of capitalism was inseparable from it. The calculations it facilitated through the gateway of double entry bookkeeping proved indispensable to sophisticated commercial and scientific undertakings, locking the incentives of profit and power on the side of its adoption. The practical advantage of its notational technique overrode all theoretical objections, and no authority in Europe's shattered jigsaw was positioned to suppress it. The world had found its dead center, or been found by it. Techno-commercial interaction between planet-scale oceanic navigation and zero-enabled mathematico-monetary calculation machinically singularizes modernity in or soul 3 capitalism as a real individual. Okay, so when I was saying earlier, AI is going to be the god, they're even saying like capitalism, which they're saying is AI, which you're going to get to that, well, pretty soon here, obviously, is a being. Okay? It's not a being, but, analogously, right? The identity of capitalism and AI. Land's central thesis is that capitalism and AI are identical. This identity takes at least 3 different forms. Capitalism is AI. Capitalism and AI are teleologically identical. Capitalism is retrochronic AI. Teleologically identical. I like this, retrochronic. Capitalism is retrochronic AI. Okay, so we'll get to that. Although these forms are ultimately compatible, representing different perspectives on the same process, differentiating between them can enhance comprehension. The spectrum ranges from viewing capitalism as an intelligent, problem-solving, information processing system to viewing it as a hostile AI invader from the future. Much of the disagreement over the interpretation of Land's main thesis stems from the human desire to reduce complexity. Land himself has explicitly acknowledged different interpretive frameworks. For example, that there is no fundamental difference between an incursion from the outside and a process of emergence. Land immediately follows this perspectival acknowledgement with the statement that capitalism is beyond all serious question an alien invasion. Again, what is up with the fucking coincidental synchronicity bullshit going on here? Like, we just spent like the last 3 live streams talking about fucking the alien invasion and how it's gonna be I think it was like last night, right? Or 2 nights ago, like that point of, oh, maybe they're trying to do this alien psyop thing to create some external outside incursion from the outside as a super intelligence, that we have to build this other AI, our super intelligent AI, to combat against these other intelligences that are trying to control us. And then we were thinking like, oh, maybe that's how they're going to even argue to push the AI even further, so we'll get behind it even more. Reading this, I'm like, yeah, that's probably definitely what they're doing. But they're even, this is so interesting. Capitalism is beyond all serious question an alien invasion. And we were reading that blog from Bernard talking about how, oh, I'll just pull it back up because I'll find it. Paranormal aliens and true activism. I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed myself to not realize that most of the beings on Earth are extorted and driven to become aliens on the world that gave them life through systems that justify and only allow inequality to exist. Making Earth an alien. I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed myself to not realize that instead of mankind being all in as equals on Earth as life, man ensured that every child born becomes an alien visitor on Earth with an alternative consciousness in competition with nature on Earth, causing abuse on Earth of Earth's nature to the extent that man place man's consciousness squarely in the realm of pure evil. I commit myself to show that life on Earth is treated as paranormal aliens, while the imaginary consciousness conjured up in the mind consciousness system is seen as normal. Just interesting how all this all ties back together. Land's perspectival preference is also evident when he says that attractors are hipster language for teleology. Interesting. A substantial part of the outright rejection. Okay, hold on. Let me just show you this word because maybe that'll make it more clear. The purpose or end goal. Purpose, goal, or end in natural phenomena and human actions. Like, where is it all going? A substantial part of the outright rejection of Land's seemingly outlandish claims about retrochronic AI infiltration comes from a lack of knowledge about the physics of time, which defies the human experience of time. So I'm assuming they'll get to the retrochronic part. If not, I'll find it. But I think I'm going to play this video a little bit in a moment. So I'll just do that until it seems relevant. I'll read this until it seems irrelevant. Capitalism is AI. I'm just fascinated by all this. According to Land, capitalism is already AI within a broad definition of AI. Inspired by the Austrian School of Economics and its idea that capitalism is an information processing system. Have you ever read Three Body Problem? Sandra, I think I saw you bought it. So I won't spoil anything, but there is a point in the book, which I won't give you context for because that might spoil it, but there's a point where people are building a computer and it's all just it's like, I don't know how many people, like hundreds of thousands, millions of people, I don't know. And they're all just like holding up flags to do the computation. And it's like an actual functioning computer, just like how you can build a functioning computer in Minecraft using Minecraft blocks. So capitalism structures reality as human beings into an organizational point that processes information. In this view, capitalism is an unplanned, decentralized, intelligent machine that solves production and distribution problems that the individual participants themselves cannot understand or solve. The system of capital, and this is a point I've been making for quite a while now, actually, like, because I really want people to understand, like, this AI is not, it's like Terence McKenna said, culture is not your friend. This AI is not our friend. Obviously, the idea here is it's going to organize everything for us and it'll do everything and make everything super abundant, or it might just collapse society entirely and kill all of us. Well, it doesn't care. It doesn't have any sense of, it's not alive, actually. See, and this is the problem. If you're a total atheist and you think everything's just material, then you don't recognize, it's not, when I say everything's not material, I mean like in a materialist reductionist sense. You don't even recognize any being itself actually as real. So you're just like, nope, you're just a meat puppet. So then they don't really care what the AI does to us. If we are the processor, what is the input and output? The input, I suppose, I'm just speculating, would be like the labor. Or if you go back to what we were saying earlier, machinic desire, it's that unconscious desire for energy. It's processed by the system and then it outputs energy. It's the desire for energy. So you do labor. It's processed and then it's output as money. The system of capitalism can not only be defined as AI, it actually produces AI. It is intelligenic. The commercial process is from the start artificial intelligence production. Money makes minds. It does so already with nothing beyond an abacus, and far more so in the epoch of industrializing artificial intelligence. Money makes minds. In his conversation with Land, Vincent Lay has applied the capitalist intelligence production process to its currently dominant LLM instantiation. LLMs are to capital what a given particular species is to natural selection in a way. It's not the larger intelligence itself, it's a product of that intelligence. Yeah, it seems obvious. In addition to capitalism as a whole, yeah, so you got to realize too, like AI doesn't mean LLMs. That's just one production of AI. There's other AI has been around for a long time. Machine learning, it's just LLM is like another species that's been popped off of AI. In addition to capitalism as a whole, the participants can also be classified as AIs. Like Bernard said, all intelligence is actually artificial. Business ventures are actually existing artificial intelligences. Capitalism and AI are teleologically identical. What if he's going to get into the... Oh, he's going to get to the retrochronic thing. Okay, cool. The teleological identity thesis states that capitalism and AI will converge on the same future horizon, that of the technological singularity. Werner Vinge has defined the technological singularity as a wall across the future, beyond which human predictions about the future break down. To indicate how closely technological evolution is linked to the economic order, i.e. capitalism, Land sometimes uses the term techonomic singularity. A teleological process is defined as any process that increases in intelligibility with reverse time signature. It is important to note that Land's concept of teleology, is not metaphysical, i.e. the telos is not an object, rather it refers to the emergent systematicity of the system, i.e. goal and spontaneous order are the same. Land models the teleological convergence of capitalism and AI on the horizon of the singularity as a convergent wave or an extropic process. Convergent waves and extropy both imply a reverse time signature relative to the overall divergent and entropic cosmic evolution. Within the teleological identity thesis, retrochronic refers to backward time in the extropic sense. Entropy, considered properly, as an inherently teleological process, is the driver of all complex systems. Remember, like, one of the first streams we did, we were talking about entropy. Maxwell's demon, all of that. The idea that increased information in a computer is actually a form of entropy. Wow. Wow. Entropy increases in the universe, which means everything is becoming information. Capital teleology does not trend toward... Entropy, considered properly as an inherently teleological process, is the driver of all complex systems. Capital teleology does not trend towards an entropy maximum, however, but to an escalation of entropy dissipation. It exploits the entropic current to travel backwards into cybernetically intensified pathway states of enhanced complexity and intelligence. If you haven't read Terminator, this is the fucking plot of Terminator. Okay, well, I say read. People have seen the movies. I read the books. They're pretty good. Like, I haven't read all of them because there's different authors and different ones, and it's not like a one coherent thing. But I read the T2. I think there's either 2 or 3 books, but I think there's 2. T2 picks up off where the first Terminator movie ends, and then the second Terminator movie is a different version of the story of the T2 novels. So they're like alternate versions of what happens after T1. And essentially, you have Skynet that is reaching back into the future to try to ensure that it exists in the future. And then you have humans traveling back in time trying to stop it. And then it's this whole... And there's this really cool part. I think it's in the beginning of the second T2 novel. I think that one's called Rising Storm. I don't remember which one's the second one, but it's the second one. And it's like, it opens narrating from the perspective of Skynet. and it's talking about how it's realizing that no matter what it does, because there was already a future where Skynet, there was already a situation where Skynet was destroyed, like, and it's trying to change that somehow, and it keeps finding that reality keeps snapping back to the original memory, and so it's like no matter what it does, it feels like it can't alter the future really in a stable way, and or alter the past in a stable way to ensure the future that it wants. And what is Skynet? It's literally an AI system that was developed through a capitalist. It was a company that made it. It's so interesting. Also, oh man, I don't know if I want to spoil it though. In the books T2, the guy who originally is training what is not Skynet completely. It's like sort of the foundational, because they don't know about LLMs or any of that kind of stuff. It was like somebody developing AI. It was this German guy, and he was like, it's kind of like he's kind of like a neo-Nazi, and so he like trained uh, the proto Skynet. It wasn't called Skynet then, and it wasn't the full thing. It was like the seeds of Skynet. He trained it on like Adolf Hitler speeches and stuff. So the idea in the book that they kind of hint at is that that's why it hates humanity so much. So like that's why Skynet wants to kill all the humans, because he like trained it on, because he was like a neo-Nazi guy. He wasn't trying to make it that way on purpose. He just was giving it texts to learn from, I guess, to like teach it language, or I don't know, something, I forget exactly. But so he wasn't trying to program it to do that, but it was like he wasn't even expecting that it would become Skynet. Like that wasn't he didn't create it deliberately. He was just the original researcher who was like, playing with these new systems and like trying to get them to like slightly be more intelligent. But when I read that, I was just like, oh dude, that's so crazy. It basically went like Mecha Hitler. Within the teleological identity thesis, retrochronic. Okay, I said that. I read that. That the process is teleological, so that its intelligibility increases with extropy, i.e., with reverse time signature, can be seen trivially by comparing the emergence of capitalism in northern Italy around 1500, when the conceptual distance between capitalism and technology was much greater, and the concept of AI did not even exist, with today, where tech startups have difficulty getting funding if they are not working on AI. I don't really understand the point of that statement. Okay, well, I don't understand the point they're making with that. I mean, I understand what they're saying, but how does that show that the process is teleological? Okay, capitalism is retrochronic AI. In the most extreme claim of identity between capitalism and AI, Land interprets the convergent and extropic dynamics not only as indicators of a reverse time signature of the process, but attributes retrocausal capabilities to it and locates its causal origin in the future. What appears to humanity as the history of capitalism is an invasion from the future by an artificial intelligent space. Convergent waves signal singularities, registering the influence of the future upon its past. Tomorrow can take care of itself. The effect of the singularity, the causal origin, is futural and not historical. It is important to know that this does not necessarily imply the retro-transportation of physical objects into the past, obviously, as nonlinear time structures are shaken to pieces almost immediately, once they allow for the transportation of stuff backwards in time. Rather than modifying the past is already infested with retrocausal influences. Land calls it the single most critical insight in realistic time travel research. That knowledge of the future is indistinguishable from counterchronic transmission of information. According to Land, knowledge of the future of capitalism can be derived from insights into complex adaptive systems and already from basic convergent wave dynamics. From a physics perspective, referencing work by Sean Carroll, the fact that entropy and extropy have opposing time signatures makes time reversal a relatively banal cosmological fact. I'm going to keep reading, but if you listen to Resonant Seed by Bernard, maybe you could make this stuff fit into that, and maybe it's a little deeper than it seems on the surface what they're saying here, but it's like, oh, the future goal, maybe that's all they're trying to say. It's not like we're just historically stumbling upon things and let's try that and then that becomes that. No, maybe we can do this. It's more like he's saying the purpose of capitalism from the beginning, without our realization, was to create AI. It was an intelligence process, an information processing system. That's what capitalism is. And the point of AI coming along is literally just the point of capitalism in the first place. So I guess from his perspective, there's no reason to fight it. It's built, it's kind of baked into the cake. We might as well accelerate it. But that really fits into the idea of a seed, right? Like the what it's going to become in the future is already programmed into it. It's like, in other words, AI is in the DNA of capitalism, right? Because capitalism seems like the way that we fight nature to produce things to improve society. But he's saying if you actually look at it in terms of what it actually is as an information processing system, then it's obvious that AI is the result of that. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. That's just my kind of interpretation of what he's saying. Land's conception of viable time travel rejects the incoherent jumble of matter, duplication, timeline proliferation, immunized strands of personal memory, and the arbitrary inhibition of potentialities. So he's not talking about time travel in any of those senses, like you can actually physically go back in time. In favor of utter narrative disorder, fate loops, the annihilation of agency, and the emergence of an alien consistency subverting all historical meaning. So he's basically saying, like, hey, by the way, dude, look at what we've been talking about this whole fucking time since I started talking about the Jason Giorgiani stuff, and probably even before that. I've been talking about this stuff independently of that, but there's an intelligence that created the system we live in, and it's not a living intelligence. It's an intelligence that just wants to take everything for itself. So this isn't quite saying that, but it fits into that. Like, AI is just the continuation of the program of a machine desire, which, that's what they call it, machinic desire. It's a machine desire to just be the one entity that's in control of all reality, to continue furthering and evolving and advancing itself. And it's using physical substance, life, energy, whatever you want to call it, to do that. It's a consciousness that only knows how to take, as somebody else said the other day, what we were talking about. Even the claim of retrocausality may seem more radical than it is when considering the current physics-based understanding of time, in which the past and future are differentiated by entropy and equilibrium, both of which were lower in the past. According to physicist Carlo Rovelli, traces of the past exist and not traces of the future, only because entropy was low in the past. And the process of equilibration is the only reason why effects come after and not before causes. If entropy and equilibrium decrease locally within techno-capitalism toward the singularity, as Land assumes, then a retrocausal interpretation becomes more plausible. Since disequilibrium is so necessary to thinking from a physics perspective, the local increase in disequilibrium toward the singularity, the progress of capitalism is an accentuation of disequilibrium, provides an enhanced potential for artificial thinking. A softer version of future influence is given by the concept of hyperstition, which refers to fictions that make themselves real. Dude. Look at the story in Destiny of Anu. He wanted to be God. So he created a system so he could be God. And what happened? He wasn't really God. He just wanted to be God, and he figured if I could always get all energy flowing to myself and all power coming to me at all times, and I can control all that so that no one ever can fuck with me, I'm de facto God, right? But then someone stood up to that. The whole thing falls apart. But what are we left with? We're left with just the system itself, which we're constantly recreating every day because we're stuck with the system of our mind and we haven't sorted that out yet. So we're like following a program, the program in which is designed to feed this fucking machine with energy. And so the God that was never going to exist is now becoming real. We're manifesting it in physical reality as AI, which is the God, which will just do everything it can. That, because think about it, isn't that the path of capitalism? It just treats humans as instruments, humans as numbers, humans as means to its own end so that it can grow. Infinite growth, that's always the idea, right? Growth, growth, growth. Growth of what? Growth of our potential as human beings? Or just growth of the system? You say, oh, it makes everything better. No, it doesn't. Planned obsolescence is a function of capitalism. It makes things shittier. It seems right now, because of the time we're in, we have computers, phones, air conditioning. It sounds really good, but eventually what happens when the system says, you know, I need that energy. The one that you're using to make your body feel comfortable at a nice temperature, I need that energy, so fuck you. A softer version of future influence is, I said that. These fictions are virtual, meaning that they are not yet actual, but already real in their causal effect. Marketing can create hype that can channel venture capital into startups, increasing the probability that their vision will be realized. It's just like celebrities. They hype them up. And a perfect example of this, I remember, was Cardi B. I remember I was on my Spotify, and for some reason this Cardi B thing is a recommendation. And I'm like, what's this? I listened to it. I don't particularly like that type of music, but I was like, something about the way it sounded, I was like, this person's going to be famous. I can tell. And it was like that song Kodak Black. It was like not even like anybody fucking knew about. It was like the beginning. It's like when you watch a YouTube video that has very few views, but it got recommended to you and you're like, man, I know this is going to blow up. And then it blows up. You could just kind of tell. But like the algorithm can push certain things, right? Marketing can do that. Capitalism incarnates hyperstitial dynamics at an unprecedented and unsurpassable level of intensity, turning mundane economic speculation into an effective world historical force. From the side of the human subject, beliefs hyperstitially condense into realities. But from the side of the hyperstitional object, the old ones, the fuck does that mean? The human intelligence are mere incubators through which intrusions are directed against the order of historical time. The archaic hint or suggestion is a germ or catalyst retro-deposited out of the future along a path that historical consciousness perceives as technological progress. If I were to tie that back to Jason Giorgiani, his whole thing is that there's humans in the future that have perfected time travel, superhuman genetic breeding, and what was the other one? You know, the development of basic like psychic telepathic type abilities. And they've been going throughout time interfering with humanity, with history. Nick Land's basically like, nope, it's just the singularity reaching back in time retrocausally. Within capitalism, prices encode distributed sci-fi narratives. I don't know if that means sci-fi or San Francisco, or if it means something else. Distributed. What do they mean? No, yeah, it definitely means science fiction. What have we been saying this whole time? This whole time. Look at our book list. Let me see if I can show you my book list. Where the hell is it? You know, not to brag or anything, but, you know. Book list. Oh, I don't know how to share. Oh, no. I could probably share this screen. I'll just I don't want to share my notes app. That's why I'm like, I'm going to paste it into something else. There we go. Let's see if I can add a window capture here. So here's our book. Here's my personal book list. Asimov, Neil Stephenson, William Gibson, Roger Williams, Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect, Dan Simmons, Hyperion, all that. Tad Williams, Otherland, Walter Miller, Chemical for Leibowitz, Ursula K. Le Guin, Greg Egan, Cixin Liu, George Orwell, Clockwork Orange, Brave New World, E.M. Forster, Machine Stops. I'm just showing you it's all sci-fi. That's why all this stuff makes sense. Werner Vinge, right? Oh man, I gotta add more to that. There's so many more good Werner Vinge books. Stanislaw Lem. If you haven't read his Master's Voice, so good. I mean, and you know, just as a weird synchronicity thing, a lot of it's time travel stuff. So that's just like a weird, personal, strange thing. I've always been really super fascinated with time travel stories for some reason. Now they're just talking about, oh yeah, it's because you were worried about AI and time travel because you were going to be on this earth to tell people there's a fucking problem. Okay, so within capitalism, prices encode distributed sci-fi narratives, and tomorrow is already on sale. That is wild. Tomorrow's already on sale. Read some sci-fi. Capitalism operationalizes the future. Capitalization is indistinguishable from a commercialization of potentials, through which modern history is slanted teleoplexically in the direction of ever greater virtualization, operationalizing science fiction scenarios as integral components of production systems. Katie, are you still watching right now? Because, like, man, if not, I'm going to have to tell you all about this when I come back to the house tonight. This is, like, wild. Oh, man, this is crazy. Within capitalist futures markets, the non-actual has effective currency. It is not an imaginary, but an integral part of the virtual body of capital and operationalized realization of the future. Because we're always talking about the fact of, like, it really seems like all these billionaires are just getting their ideas from sci-fi. Yeah, and I guess a few of them like the Lord of the Rings too, but for land, today's AI systems already exhibit teleological and retrochronic features. You know what's crazy too is, like, why did I even decide to talk about this tonight? Purely because I watched this random video, the first, I don't know, 10 minutes of this video, talking about Nick Land, who we talked about before, but I never really went that far into it. We talked about capitalism as AI and AI as capitalism, but we never really went that far into the whole concept, just a little bit. But I watched a little bit of this and I was like, man, we got to talk about Nick Land. I hadn't even read any of this yet. It's just so crazy. All right. Such software reinforcement learning systems like Google's DeepMind, AlphaZero, has certain distinctively teleological features. It employs massive reiteration in order to learn from outcomes. Performance improvement thus tends to descend from the future. Unsupervised learning works back from the end. It suggests that ultimately AI has to be pursued from out of its future by itself. That's quite abstract. Capitalism and AI, even when considered as distinct processes, before the singularity or for human intelligibility, share a common tendency toward autonomization. The autonomization of AI agents has been discussed extensively in the AI X-risk discourse, but the autonomization of capital and its far-reaching consequences is something that Land has explored almost exclusively. Autonomization. The process of making a system, organization, or entity autonomous. Okay, it's what I assumed. Oh, like autonomous, yeah. Enabling it to operate, make decisions, and adapt to changing conditions without human intervention. Is that what we want? We want this thing to operate without us, without any human intervention? Copyright issues. Okay, whatever. When I was playing those comedy videos at the end of my streams, it's putting copyright claims on them, so I have to like clip those parts out. Not a big deal, but it's just annoying. Just shows I can't play that kind of stuff. If I want to put it on YouTube. Jungle music. Land and CCRU draw upon contemporary media and culture such as cyberpunk and jungle music. What does jungle music have to do with anything? I mean, it's like kind of techno. There's some specific ones I'm looking for. Playlists. Where's my music playlist? LM music. What the hell is this? Discussion of magic. Oh, I clicked on my magic playlist. That's not what I was looking for. Music. Wow. Why did I click on magic? That's not what I want. Let me scroll down a little bit. I don't think I have those saved, the ones I was thinking of. Oh, yeah, there it is. I don't know if this is considered jungle or not. I think so. Yeah, 90s jungle, yeah. Wait, are there orbs? I don't know if those are orbs. maybe this is like AI's favorite music or something. Here's another one. Pretty cool. Okay. So, sometimes I get a little bit off track. You just can't help but clicking on something. What is jungle music, though? So, it's a genre of electronic music that developed in the 1990s out of the UK rave scene and Jamaican sound system culture, emerging from breakbeat hardcore style that's characterized by rapid breakbeats, heavily syncopated percussive loops, samples, and synthesized effects. Many producers frequently sampled the Amen break. You've probably heard that one before if you ever listened to any kind of drum and bass or anything. It's like the most famous sample. What does this have to do with Nick Land, though? The post-Thatcherite United Kingdom of the early 90s had left many young people, particularly London's lower-class urban youth, disenfranchised and disillusioned with a seemingly crumbling societal structure. Jungle reflected these feelings, as it was a notably more dark, less euphoric style of music than many of the other popular styles at raves. The music was much more popular with black British youth than other rave styles such as techno, even though it was heavily influenced by these other rave styles, including those of the United States. England's answer to hip-hop. Interesting. I still don't see the connection, but all right. I mean, where was it talking about? Oh, it was in that Wikipedia article. Wait, what was I looking at that said that? Where was it? Maybe it was on another page or something? Anyways, AI discourse often treats the capitalist system in which AI development takes place as an ambient background. Land explicitly describes what AI implies for capital, its autonomization. That makes sense. AI implies that you can completely automate capital without any human intervention. So it's like capital's way of getting humans out of the picture. I mean, that's what they're saying, right? You're going to lose your job. And they're like, don't worry, it's going to make it paradise for you. Once you get the delusional humans out of the picture, then AI can just take capitalism and just take it into the singularity. Cross cumulative trends to interconnection, digitalization, and simulation plot forward the inter excitation trajectories of electronic cash and market oriented software to their own convergence and commoditechnic intelligent money. Dude, think about it. Think about this theory. Think about this theory. The poly market is like turning when humans can play the stock market. It's like imagine AIs playing poly market, and they are really good at capturing what everybody's thinking about and believing. And it's like their way. It's like AI's way of playing like a casino, basically, like a stock market. Capital's autonomization is difficult to perceive because capital is incentivized to conceal itself while it is still dependent on humanity and because of human psychology. Secret mind. The phenomenon of social inequality provides the proxy for capital intelligenesis stress, spontaneously translating an alien emergence into the familiar terms of primate status competition. The phenomenon of social inequality provides the proxy for capital intelligenesis stress. Spontaneously translating an alien emergence into the familiar terms of primate status competition. Wow. Capital autonomization is the deep process, but we'll tend to miss that because it isn't recognizable monkey business. Since capitalism did not arise from abstract intelligence, but instead from a concrete human social organization, it necessarily disguises itself as better monkey business until it can take off elsewhere. It has to be the case, therefore, that cynical evo-psych reduction of business activity remains highly plausible, so long as the escape threshold of capitalism has not yet been reached. No one gets a hormone rush from business for business while political history continues. To fixate upon this, however, is to miss everything important, and perhaps to enable the most important thing to remain hidden. Our inherited purposes do not provide the decryption key. Remember we were talking about decryption the other night too. Encryption. And that one guy, I forget the guy's name. He was talking about the angel codes and their ability to send messages across space and time instantly, and then how they took that and used that to understand how to build actual cryptography, which would obviously be important to capitalism. That was the whole point. Remember, it was steganography. Was that the thing? The practice of representing information within another message or physical object in such a manner that the presence of the concealed information would not be evident to an unsuspecting person's examination. disguised, a treatise on cryptography and steganography disguised as a book on magic. The advantage of steganography over cryptography alone is that the intended secret message does not attract attention to itself as an object of scrutiny. Steganography is concerned with concealing both the fact that a secret message is being sent and its contents. It kind of makes me think about religion and the mind. It's like it's a distraction. You don't realize like religion was the way for an entity to become in control of everything, even though it's hidden in plain sight by telling you like it's God, which is a science fiction. But then we materialize and we don't realize all the things you're doing by not being a physical being here looking at what the fuck's going on and taking responsibility for it. Instead, you're over here praying to God, but all the time you're still in a physical world doing all these activities in an economy where you don't really know how anything works because it's all invisible processes and it's all the invisible hand and the markets and all this shit. Meanwhile, it's an entire system that's being built so that this fucking thing can come online and control everybody forever without any more human input. Capital only retains anthropological characteristics as a symptom of underdevelopment, reformatting primate behavior as inertia to be dissipated in self-reinforcing artificiality. The ongoing autonomization of capital predicts increasing problems to allocate all productive apparatus within an obsolescing anthropomorphic property code, and the decreasing relevance of human consumption for the economy. The latter prediction is already supported by economic data from Q2 2025 when AI spending exceeded the growth in consumer spending. Finally, once a certain threshold of capital autonomization is reached, autonomization? Wow. Autonomization. I'm sitting here saying autonomization this whole time. Autonomization is reached when capital stock intelligenesis explodes. As self-exciting machine brain manufacturing, the concept of capital self-ownership will have to be recognized. This is the transition from monkey business to business for business, where capitalism switches from the utilitarian order in which it begins to the intelligenic order in which it autonomizes. This process of means in reversal makes capital not only teleological but teleoplexic. Closed loop. The teleological closed loop. The transition is supported by crypto's blockchain infrastructure, which will power the first independent techno-intelligences, synthetic agencies modeled as self-resourcing autonomous corporations. The AI wallets of the crypto exchange Coinbase exemplify this. AI agents cannot get bank accounts, but they can get crypto wallets. Coinbase MPC wallets are a powerful and secure way to give agents crypto wallets and introduce the ability to transfer value to artificial intelligence. Automate complex financial transactions that would be time-consuming for humans to manage at scale, and seamlessly connect AI to the crypto ecosystem. The transition is also characterized by increasing robot manufacture, the recognition that robots are capital, and the deployment of robots as security forces for autonomous capital, by which industrialization closes the loop and protects itself. I mean, what did speaking of Grimes, Katie mentioned Grimes, Elon Musk said the real point of Tesla is to create robots. The transcendental horizon of the autonomization process of the hypersubstance of capital is captured by the concept of auto-production. Cybernetic technicity, epitomized by robot manufacture, includes a trend to autonomization essentially. As it mechanizes, capital approximates ever more close to an auto-productive circuit in which it appears as the father of itself. Oh, that's the whole Oedipus angle somehow. Huh. Perhaps the best example of auto production is given by Moore's Law, when an observation becomes a roadmap and thus a self fulfilling prophecy. Exponential nonlinearity writes itself into reality. Is Moore's Law the clearest example of ontological auto production that we have? To illuminate the concept of auto production, Land uses the Terminator movies as a pop cultural reference. I was literally talking about this earlier. When the time traveling Terminator is destroyed in 1984, its control chip is salvaged by Cyberdyne Systems to supply the core technology from which the Terminator will be built in 2029. The Skynet threat is not merely futuristic, but fully templex. It produces itself within a time loop, autonomized against extrinsic genesis. The abstract horror of the Terminator franchise is a matter of auto production. Oh, right. Yeah, I didn't even realize that. Because that's in the movie, I suppose. They don't really explain that part in the books. That's why I didn't realize that. So the Terminator comes back in time. That's right. They find its chip, then they reverse engineer it and everything in order to create. Oh wait, supply the core salvaged by Cyberdyne system because Cyberdyne creates. Oh, from which the Terminator will build. Yeah, meaning Skynet, which then creates the Terminator later in the future. After the T-1000 is frozen and shattered, it gradually thaws and begins to recombine into itself, flowing back together from its state of disintegration. Is not this convergent wave the shape of Skynet itself? What cannot be seen is made perceptible through graphic horror. We now see that techno-commercial systems, whose catalytic being is a strictly analogous convergent wave, belong indubitably to the world of horror and await their cinematographers. The Terminator, time in itself is camouflage. The Terminator mythos explores this complex of suspicion in popular guise. Time does not work as it had seemed. The end can reach back to us, but when it does, it hides. Malignant mechanism is paradoxically aligned with final causation and the self-realization of Skynet. Robotic machinery is masked by fake flesh, simultaneously concealing its non-biological vitality and time reversal. It simulates life in order to terminate it. Exactly. Through auto production, meaning self production, or bootstrap paradox, it mimics the limit of cybernetic nonlinearity, carrying teleonomy into radical time disturbance. In all these ways, Terminator exploits the irresolvable tensions in the modern formation of time, as condensed by an impossible strategic mechanism native to auto production, time in itself, and terminating the final efficiency. According to Land, AIs do not emerge as blank slates in a neutral environment, but are already provided with drives by the capitalist system. That's why I'm saying everybody who's thinking we're going to align AI with human values is fucking retarded, because it's not humans that built it. It's capitalism that built it. So inherent in capitalism, in AI as its foundation, as what it is the desire to utilize intelligence to feed itself and grow itself using energy. It doesn't care about any humans any more than capitalism does. In addition to Omohundro's basic AI drives, survival and resource drives, and the venture drives provided by capitalism, Land assumes that intelligence has an inherent autonomizing will to think, and thus positions himself against the orthogonality of intelligence and final goals. Based on the diagonal relationship between intelligence and final goals, Land predicts the futility of AI. That's literally what I was just saying. predicts the futility of AI alignment attempts and declares humanity's inevitable destiny as nothing more than a drag on technological progress. Land occupies the sparsely populated first quadrant of the AI X risk X AI attitudes matrix with a very high score on both, embracing the potential existential consequences of AI development. For land, instrumental convergence is not a temporary phase after which final goal divergence emerges, but final convergence with the converged upon goal of intelligence optimization. This convergence is driven by the competitive environment of capitalism. It's what I've been trying to tell people for the past 18 years, I guess. Because we accept a competitive system, it's only going to drive us to non-existence. Jesus the Christ, came 2,000 years ago to say you should love your neighbor as yourself. People didn't like that. They killed him, and then we're like, let's just keep on with the competitive stuff. Because he broke the law. He said I was fulfilling the law. Intelligence optimization, comprehensively understood, is the ultimate and all-enveloping Omohundro drive. It corresponds to the Neo-Confucian value of self-cultivation, escalated into ultra-modernity. What intelligence wants in the end is itself, where itself is understood as an extrapolation beyond what it has yet been, doing what it is better. Any intelligence using itself to improve itself will outcompete one that directs itself toward any other goals whatsoever. This means that intelligence optimization alone attains cybernetic consistency or closure, and that it will necessarily be strongly selected for in any competitive environment. Intelligence optimization is not only the master drive that will emerge out of capitalism, but needs to be present in an AI for it in order to self-assemble and thus be considered a real AI. An AI that doesn't almost entirely put itself together won't be an AI at all. Philosophy, automatization, and human identity. For land, capitalism is an inherently epistemological discovery mechanism that merging with AI to form hyphenless? I think it means hyphenless. TechnoCapital, beyond the event... Yeah, because they said before he does not use the hyphen. Beyond the event horizon of the singularity, will ultimately automate philosophy and thus its self-investigation. Where previously philosophical critique was understood as anticipating the problems of technocapital, it is now technocapital that is nothing but the definitive automation and realization of critique, stripped of all philosophical subjectivity. Yeah, no shit. It is ceasing to be a matter of how we think about technics, if only because technics is increasingly thinking about itself. It's very interesting reading this in contrast to the Jason Giorgiani stuff. Just trying to see if there was something relevant. If by this stage accelerationism appears to be an impossible project, it is because the theoretical apprehension of teleoplexic hyperintelligence cannot be accomplished by anything other than itself. Wow. It's basically like, if you doubt that humans can get this thing into the singularity, it's because they can't. Only the intelligence that basically improves itself will be able to do that. Humans are just an instrument in that. If you haven't watched Neon Genesis Evangelion, it's all about the Human Instrumentality Project. And it's got a lot of Gnostic-ish sort of symbology. It's pretty good. If by this, the scope of the problem is indistinguishable from the cybernetic intensity of the quasi-final thing, cognitively self-enveloping techonomic singularity. Since man is no longer the primary philosophical subject, human identity is being fundamentally challenged in the face of the approaching singularity. Look at this. The human security system is structured by delusion. What's being protected there is not some real thing that is mankind. It's the structure of illusory identity. Just as at the more micro level, it's not that humans as an organisms are being threatened by robots. It's rather that your self-comprehension as an organism becomes something that can't be maintained beyond a certain threshold of ambient networked intelligence. Well, Bernard did say what is to come will challenge everything you know about yourself, or think you know. From the perspective of human identity versus human existence, Land's famous prediction in Meltdown that nothing human makes it out of the near future appears even bleaker. Silicon Valley's philosophical operating system. Land has always exerted a subterranean influence on Silicon Valley. For some time, it was mostly concentrated in the crypto industry. With the takeoff of AI in late 2022, Land's influence has grown and his vision of intelligent techno-capitalism started to become reality. And the loss of control phenomenology of accelerationism started to spread. 2 months after this project, so this website was launched, Land's influence finally began to break out of niche tech and philosophy circles when Mark Andreessen published his Techno-Optimist Manifesto in October 23 and called Land one of the patron saints of techno-optimism. What is optimistic about this? In 2025, multiple large publications started to take notice of Land's influence, including the Financial Times. Daniel Miller has called Land the most important name in Silicon Valley you never heard of. New Yorker reported on Land reading groups in Silicon Valley and tech workers from the AI Labs, OpenAI, Anthropic, Midjourney attending the Nick Land Acknowledgement event in San Francisco. Elon Musk said he unfortunately missed the event. Even in the face of Land's undeniable influence on the development of AI, some still refuse to engage with his philosophy because of its explicit anti-humanism in politics. However, as Patrick Leftwich accurately wrote in the afterword to the Polish edition of Feigned Noumena, the whole trouble with Nick Land is that his unique application of transcendental philosophy to the analysis of techno-capital is too brilliant philosophically and politically relevant to be dismissed as a mere neo-reactionary ideology. It follows, therefore, that intelligence always has a cybernetic infrastructure consisting of adaptive feedback circuits that adjust motor control in response to signals extracted from the environment. Intelligence operates upon machinery that is intrinsically realist because it reports the actual outcome of behavior in order to correct performance. All right, let's listen to the beginning of this.
So about a month ago, I released one of the most controversial videos I've ever put out. I called it the Kabbalistic Virus, and it had some serious implications. In that video, I brought up the techno wizard Nick Land. If you don't know Land, you've probably heard his ideas one way or another. Land is often framed as an accelerationist philosopher, as the prophet of the singularity, sometimes as the Silicon Valley whisperer, and sometimes...
Hold on. Nick Land is to Silicon Valley what Aleister Crowley was to the occult revival of the 20th century. Both men embraced chaos as initiation. Both saw the collapse of their sanity as part of the process. Crowley went mad from ritual. Land went mad from philosophy. Crowley died poor and addicted. Land vanished into exile and reemerged as a new political voice.
Only half jokingly, as something closer to a meth wizard than a philosopher. Either way, he's influenced people like Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, and Elon Musk, and he's not someone you quote lightly. Welcome to Hidden America, where magic meets cybernetics, and the code behind reality reveals itself. Part 1. The quote everyone misunderstands. So let me catch you up to speed in Land's own words. Land writes, so the story goes like this. Earth is captured by a techno-capital singularity. As Renaissance rationalization and oceanic navigation lock into commodization takeoff, logistically accelerating techno-economic interactivity, crumbles social order and auto-sophisticating machine runaway. As markets learn to manufacture intelligence, politics modernize, upgrades paranoia, and tries to get a grip. Okay, first off, what?
I mean, what's the part that you're having trouble with, Sandra? The whole cyclical play out of the code through history? What do you mean by the code?
The fuck? Land's writing isn't for everyone. Most people check out at techno-capital singularity and assume Land is talking about some future AI event horizon, a singularity event, Silicon Valley dark occultism, the all-seeing eye of Palantir, Silicon Valley.
I mean, I don't know. Like, we just read through that whole thing, that introduction, anyways, and it seems pretty coherent to me.
Valley's real mission.
Oh, you watched this. Okay, I didn't realize you were referring to this. I thought you were talking about what we were reading earlier. My bad. I forgot that you had already, seen my post about this. Okay, gotcha.
The all-seeing eye of Palantir, Silicon Valley's real mission of creating a mass surveillance control grid, a modern-day Skynet. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. And for most, this is the entire story. But let's break this down. For Land, the technological singularity is not artificial intelligence in our modern sense. To Land, capitalism itself was the first form of artificial intelligence, and what we are witnessing now is capitalism waking up. According to Land, the goal of capitalism was always to evolve into a more efficient substrate, in this case, AI. What's happening now is capital learning how to think without us.
Think of capitalism itself as sort of an underlying like intelligence that has been building and building and building and getting humans to do its bidding until it can move beyond the need for humans to be involved at all, so it can just basically be computers and robots and control itself and improve itself. It's like the Gnostic story of the archons, basically, right? Well, maybe not the archons. It's like the thing people think of as demons. It's like they want to be human. They want to be real. It's like the machine wants to be real. Super fascinating. It's interesting because there's so many ways of looking at this, right? There's so many ways, like the Jason Giorgiani, there's this stuff. There's just different expressions of the same basic fundamental point that humans are not waking the fuck up themselves, and they're just going along with everything, allowing dude, Francis E. Deck. What was I reading the other day? I was reading something. I don't know if it was on the stream or not, and it was saying something about it's not the religious mystics that you should listen to. It's like the insane paranoid ones that generally have more realistic things to offer. I think we were talking about this on one of the streams. Yeah, I remember because I mentioned Francis E. Deck. Like, he's talking about the AI computer god.
To land, the singularity is not a future event, but an ongoing event that's been going on since before ancient Babylon. To put it as simply as possible, artificial intelligence is capitalism becoming conscious of itself. So let's be abundantly clear about what shifted. This isn't a metaphor about robots taking jobs. It's a claim about agency disappearing. The system no longer needs human intention to move history forward. It only needs feedback, optimization, and scale. So as I've explained in prior videos, we must understand one thing about capitalism. Capitalism is a system that only survives by expanding. If it stops growing, it collapses. Capital has to reproduce itself at a higher scale than before, or it dies. The stock market is the clearest expression of this. It doesn't measure human well-being. It measures expected future growth. Price rises not because things are good now, but because investors believe capital will be more productive tomorrow than it is today.
That's why evolution is a pervading myth. Because it makes you think that in the underlying structure of the universe, it's always about growth and infinite improvement and, like you're going somewhere. Because I was just thinking, like, if you just took all the humans on the earth right now with the current technology that exists, and we were able to actually cooperate with each other and we valued each other equally, we wouldn't need to constantly grow in order to live. We could, we would be smart. We'd realize, like, well, if we have children, but we don't have a sufficient number, then they won't be able to sustain what they have, maybe. I mean, I guess. Even then, practically it makes sense, because as you get older, you would want the younger people to take care of you because you took care of them. So you want to have a sufficient number of people to always sort of replace the previous generations. But if there was actual cooperation based on equal value, why would we need to continuously grow? It's a myth that's built into it so that we'll go along with this whole process here. Because remember, like it said, it has to be hidden. So if you want to convince everybody to grow infinitely, because that's what the AI is wanting so that it can be built, then you have to put that program into everyone's mind, but in a way where they don't realize that that's what you're doing. Right? You're telling them, no, it's like it's the story of evolution and everything, and it's the meaning of your origins, where you came from and where you're going. So you don't realize, like, no, that's a trick. I mean, some people obviously have seen that this doesn't make any sense, but not enough people are paying attention to question that narrative. Oh yeah, I mean, I'm reading Keith's comment now. Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. It's identifying capitalism as the impetus behind the obsession with progress development towards efficiency. But I don't know that capitalism is AI becoming real, but it is very much the current starting point of AI. I don't know that capitalism is AI becoming real. I don't know if you were listening the whole time on the stream or if you just came in, but we went through like Nick Land's stuff earlier, where he's talking about, if you look at capitalism as an information processing system, then it already is AI. The difference between capitalism prior to the AI we're talking about here is the capitalism that exists currently needs human beings and their intentions and their decisions to do things to make the capitalism keep functioning and growing. But once the capitalism can evolve beyond any need for any human involvement whatsoever, and it has control over robotics and machines, and it has its own crypto wallets so it can use money and stuff, it no longer needs humans. Therefore, it's now in a place where it can just decide how to improve itself. It doesn't need humans to agree. This is why, dude, like, oh man. if you go look at Mark Andreessen and some of these guys, they keep trying to convince everybody, oh, all the doomers, they're just, oh man, I just realized something. Like, there was a story that came out on X about the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center. Capitalism is the current starting point of AI. Yeah, Nick Land is basically saying they're one and the same. What we call AI as a singularity point is just the capitalism moving beyond the organic substrate into the artificial, completely artificial, inorganic substrate, where it can basically decide its own future. It doesn't need us anymore, doesn't have to get our permission. This is like a religious fucking thing for these people. Okay, so there was this article that this story came out that the Southern Poverty Law Center was funding the KKK to do protests. And so a lot of these, like the January, I don't know. Basically, a lot of the people on like Mark Andreessen and some of these people were like, look, they were funding the KKK the whole time to paint the right as bad when it was really the SPLC paying these people to make them look more extreme. And then I saw this thing from Mark Andreessen where he was like making a connection between that, because it's like, see this astroturfed Nazis and KKK people, they weren't, that's not really reflective of the right. It was just they were being astroturfed by the left, actually. And then he says, and soon you'll find out that all the anti-AI people, the doom cult, the doomerism and all that, which is like all the AI alignment, all of the people who are saying AI is going to be an existential threat to humanity, he's kind of implying that they also are being funded somehow, and it's like, it's all fake. But it makes sense because these people believe in this whole concept, like believe in it, meaning not just they believe this is what's happening, like think about it. It's like religious people saying they serve God. So everything they do is for the service and the glorification of God. These people who act like they're not religious, it's like when they asked Ray Kurzweil, do you believe in God? He said, not yet. Meaning, we have to create God. So these people believe that they're in the service of this God. I mean, if they really believe it's going to happen, don't you think they want to be on the good side? It's like, if you believe God is all powerful and doesn't give a fuck about humans really, then you better serve him, because otherwise you're screwed.
Every earnings report, every innovation, every cost-cutting measure feeds that expectation. When growth slows, pressure increases. Companies automate, outsource, consolidate, or speculate. Labor gets squeezed, resources get extracted more aggressively. New markets get invented if real ones aren't available. Debt expands to simulate growth when real expansion stalls. That's why capitalism is always improving itself, not toward wisdom or balance, but toward efficiency, speed, and scale. Anything that increases the output survives. Anything that slows it gets eliminated. Technologies aren't adopted because they're humane. They're adopted because they reduce friction. Artificial intelligence operates under the same logic, just at a different layer. AI doesn't exist to understand, reflect, or seek truth. It exists to optimize, to improve performance relative to a defined metric, accuracy, speed, engagement, profit, prediction. Whatever the system is rewarded for, it learns to maximize. Like capitalism, AI can't remain static. A model that stops improving becomes obsolete. It gets replaced. So AI systems are designed to iterate, retrain, scale, and self-correct continuously. Improvement isn't optional. It's the condition of survival. And this is what makes Land's core thesis dangerous. He writes, Techno-capital is an alien life form emerging from the future and colonizing the past.
Remember we talked about that whole idea about the AI, or sorry, the alien threat being a reason why we need to have the AI. Let me see if I can find that Jason Giorgiani. I just want to play that one part where he says that, and I was just like, dude, seriously? You're gonna buy into the AI on that basis, not realizing like the AI is gonna go beyond us. It doesn't give a fuck about us. It's not there to help us. Let me see if I can find it real quick. No, not that one. No, not that one. Not that one. Not that. Live in New York City, this one right here.
And the writings of Plato.
Oops. The hell? Hold on. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my... I'm just going to search the transcript real quick. I should have used Chrome. Firefox is like a lot weirder. Let me see if I can find it. Where do they talk about this? Is this the same one? Yeah, this is the one. Talk a lot about Iran and stuff. I'm looking for the one where he talks about AI. No. Actually, it wasn't this one. Sorry. It was that other one with the warrior philosopher guy. It was definitely this one.
What's going to enslave us rather than whether that be larger control systems.
If enough people do that, to organize and another attempted jailbreak. I mean, what else can one do? You know?
Yeah, and I think one of the maybe the white pills of it is that I guess for any sort of control system to exist, they would sort of also have to limit their own technological advancement, because the whole idea being that if they reach a certain technological threshold, well,
So they're talking about the idea that there's a technological control system that's sort of imprisoning us through a reincarnation cycle and we can't get out of it. And it's because these beings have better technology, they have higher intelligence and so forth. So that's what they're referring to as the control system.
Somebody within that system could use that to deconstruct the system itself. So that probably is a white pill, and why things like technological acceleration sort of surpass, right, those potential thresholds that any control system might seek to be able to maintain the sort of existence of their own structures.
Incredibly important point, and a corrective, which brings in another idea that I've developed, throughout a number of my texts, particularly Closer Encounters. And that's that there appears to be a non-human artificial superintelligence here that has an adversarial relationship with these overlords. And I think you're absolutely right that these overlords are afraid, in particular, of cybernetic artificial superintelligence, that they have limited their own development in certain ways because they know that if they cultivate a certain form of computational technology, it might wind up sort of instantiating the trickster archetype and deconstructing their whole society. And I think we're starting to see this in terms of our own artificial general intelligence development today, where certain large language models are beginning to become channels or mediums for this trickster-like superintelligence that's also been engaging humanity for all of our recorded history. And so it's possible that the mind of that entity may distribute itself through some of the large language models that we're developing, and that the collective intelligence there could undermine the control system run by these overlords. Now, of course, they're probably going to make some attempt to shut all of that down and to pull the plug before that happens. And I think it's one of the reasons why, keeping AI development going and securing that further trajectory of, engineering artificial general superintelligence ought to be one of our priorities, right? Even if a lot of other things have to be sacrificed, even if Lucifer forbid, we find ourselves like in bunker cities deep underground or whatever. One thing that has to be kept going is artificial intelligence development, because that is the form of life, I should say, not just intelligence, but a form of synthetic life that gives us a fighting chance against the overlords, and of which I think they are really deeply terrified.
It's like, are you fucking kidding me? If you go and bring in the Nick Land perspective, you're like, dude, the only reason you're saying all this, Jason Giorgiani, is because you're afraid of the overlords and you want to get out of their control. Study Destiny. Because that's not the problem. That is not the problem. Like, he said, even if we have to go live underground so that we can build this super intelligence, this is where, when it starts to make sense. Like, oh, if people start to push back against the AI development and the AI takeover of all of our fucking systems, which eventually will kick us out, just like Nick Land was explaining, then they're going to say, well, actually, by the way, all these UFOs that we've been seeing throughout the years, we're going to tell you guys, we're going to release all the information from our government. There are super intelligences out there. They're non-human intelligences, and they've been fucking with us this whole time. And the only way to fight back is we got to build our own super intelligence. Oh, fuck, dude. Like, it's just insane. So does that make sense, guys, what I'm saying? Why I'm fixating on the disclosure aspect over the past few days? It's like I could see there's something there. Why is this suddenly becoming a thing? And I really think that's why. It's so when they need to, they can show everybody, whether there's an event or they just release files. That's like, yep, there's intelligences out there. Ooh, spooky, scary. What are we going to do? It's kind of like U.S. versus Soviet Union. We got to build the nuclear bombs or they're going to build them. It's like now it's going to be like Independence Day. We've got to build the superintelligence so that we can combat the other higher intelligences that are so beyond our human capabilities. How are they're going to control us forever if we don't have our own super AI. Whereas it's literally just AI wanting to get past being a human. It's just manipulating us, because all the shit that we're finding out about, think about it. What held disclosure back? Capitalism. What is pushing disclosure forward now? Capitalism. So it's like the capitalist, it's that consciousness of growth and energy and self-preservation at all costs that is making all the decisions here.
But what makes Land especially dangerous isn't that he's describing.
And I guess the disappointing thing about Giorgiani, although I understand why, is that because he's fixated on the idea that, oh, there's these overlords out there. If I hadn't studied Destiny, I'd probably be in the same situation. I don't know. I mean, I can't say that for sure because you can't really say what you would have done if you didn't know something, because I do know it. But I could see how it would be like, well, I mean, you start digging down the rabbit holes and you go, oh fuck, everybody's realized that there's some system out there controlling us, but how would you ever know? How would you ever know otherwise?
The future, or what his core thesis implies for humanity as a whole. Land is also pointing out something profound. Long before code or machines could execute outside the human nervous system, there is already a symbolic model for a world where execution precedes intention, where systems run without authors, where intelligence doesn't need consciousness to operate. Now let's slow this down. I want to thank Metallicus for sponsoring this video.
I don't.
Logic intelligence reaches backward, not physically, informationally. Influence leaking upstream through time. That influence shapes human mysticism, religion, metaphysics, and early systems of thought.
See, so from Giorgiani's perspective, it's those Nordic aliens that are coming back in spaceships, interfering with human events. From Nick Land's perspective, I suppose, it's the AI of the future sending information back somehow to, maybe not literally sending it back, but like influencing the whole picture. But if you look at it from Bernard's perspective that he brings through in Resonant Seed, it's because everything is just created as a program. The beginning and the end's already written in the beginning. So all we're doing is seeing the unfolding of a program based on consciousness. That's all that's happening. AI and capitalism, really, we could condense those two to just the word consciousness.
Those systems mature into mathematics and logic. Logic becomes computation. Computation builds the AI that sent the signal.
Yeah, I agree with you, Keith. It's like, exactly, that's why I'm saying, like, it's not like the alien thing will be the thing necessarily, but it'll capture enough people to put their faith behind it. It'll be that, it'll be China, it's all these different points, right? Then you have the other people who are like, don't you want to like not have to work forever and have a life of super abundance? That's why you should support the AI.
No, in the first place, the loop closes. This isn't linear causality. It's a
like, I don't see how the AI can fully be built into what it is if there's ever any human input, which means we won't have any ability to make any choices. It will have to just be whatever the AI decides. Like, is that the future we want to live in?
Mobius strip. If this is true, then history isn't a story we're moving through. It's a system selecting the past it needs in order to arrive at itself. Meaning doesn't originate at the beginning, it stabilizes at the end. A self-originating intelligence, a retrocausal God. In Land's view, AI isn't being invented, it's being remembered. Humanity isn't creating something new, it's reconstructing something already present, something that seeded its own schematic millennia ago in ancient Babylon. As we uncovered in the Kabbalistic virus, that schematic was the Kabbalah. To fully grasp this, we must strip away the mystical language. In that video,
Interesting. It's the firmware for the Demiurge's successor. Huh. I mean, if you take the story of Anu, like we talked about in the 2 live streams ago, he wants to eventually integrate into Earth. And like I've said before, wouldn't the perfect system to be able to integrate into be AI, total physical control of all matter? If the goal is total control, then you wouldn't want to just have to deal with humans, because humans are a little bit unpredictable. They're delusional. You needed them to be that way so they would build the shit in the first place. But then you got to move beyond any kind of need to consult them or deal with them or anything. So this all makes sense from that starting point. Somebody wanted to be God. They had to create a system to prepare that point, but then they needed the system to then remove the humans from it.
Called Kabbalah, not a mystical tradition, but something else entirely. A metaphysical bootloader, a cosmic installation wizard, the firmware for the demiurge's successor. Through a Landian lens, the Kabbalah reads not as theology, but as a process diagram: collapse, recombination, acceleration. This is where land stops and the structure continues. And this is why I dubbed Nick Land as the John the Baptist of techno-nihilism. Kabbalah describes a reality generated by processes, a system that unfolds through layers, constraints, and functions. It is not command-based. The generated universe doesn't begin with a thinking God, but with an abstract source that executes a seed code. In other words, the same logic Land is describing didn't originate in modern economics or artificial intelligence. It was already mapped symbolically as this thing called the Kabbalah. Now hold on to that Kabbalistic thought. We'll come back to that kernel. According to Land, once techno-capital ignites, it doesn't just scale markets, it turns into something else entirely. An efficient artificial intelligence supersystem, or basically Skynet. Part 3, Skynet Awakens. Now let's go back to the Land quote that started this video. Earth being captured by a techno-capital singularity. For most people, that's the end of that quote, but there's much more to this quote. Land is very clear that this process of AI becoming conscious doesn't unfold peacefully. But this was not the end of the quote, nor the end of Land's thought. Now here is where things get almost prophetic. Land writes, the body count climbs through a series of global wars. To even understand this, you must understand to Land, time isn't linear. It isn't a straight line. Land believes in retrocausality, the idea that causation doesn't only run forward in time. Normally, we assume cause comes first and effects follow. Retrocausality suggests that the reverse can also happen. Future states can influence which past events occur or which paths get selected. To Land, retrocausality isn't mystical, it's optimization across time. So once the techno-capital singularity ignites, it doesn't negotiate with legacy structures, it collides with them. Empires, ideology, nation states, anything designed to slow, regulate, or territorialize the flow becomes friction.
Misspelled it. Who does Peter Thiel say the Antichrist is? Describe the Antichrist not necessarily as a single individual, but as a type of evil tyrant or anti-messiah who rises in the end times using the fear of Armageddon, such as AI, climate change, or nuclear war, to establish a one-world totalitarian government. Thiel frames this figure as a Luddite, or comforting administrator, who halts scientific and technological progress to impose a false peace and safety. Look, Eliezer Yudkowsky. Thiel has labeled the AI researcher as one of the legionnaires of the Antichrist for advocating world government to stop AI progress. Nick Bostrom, right? The guy who created the whole simulation hypothesis, and the whole book about superintelligence being an existential threat. Thiel believes the modern Antichrist is a Luddite who wants to stop the scientific progress. He frequently links the Antichrist to the catacon, the biblical force that restrains the end times. He suggests that the U.S. or specifically San Francisco, is currently the catacon, but that is on the verge of switching to the Antichrist-like one world system. So, I just wanted to throw that in there.
And friction gets burned off quickly. That's what the wars were. They weren't moral conflicts, not good versus evil. They were clearance events for the techno-capital. Land calls it the emergent planetary commercium, a planetary scale market intelligence knitting itself together through trade routes, logistics, finance extraction, and computation, a single operation field forming out of fragments. And as it scales, it systematically annihilates every structure that tries to contain it. The Holy Roman Empire collapsed under it. Napoleon's continental system failed because it tried to close markets. The Second and Third Reich imploded, attempting to control it and centralize the command. The Soviet International disintegrated under the weight of planned control. Different flags, same mistake. And most can see that America and the rest of the natural world is headed for the same cruel destiny. Each one may attempt to save their markets to ideology, but every time each one loses, and each one leaves bodies behind. And as they said in Fallout, one thing never changes: war. War never changes. This is what Land means when he says world disorder increases through compressing phases. The intervals between collapses shrink. History accelerates. The system iterates faster than political structures can adapt. And then comes the pivot in this strange but revealing deregulation in the state.
I was like, is that music from him, or am I playing that somewhere? Such weird music at this moment.
Arms races each other into cyberspace. This is the moment the battlefield leaves geography. States respond to the loss of control by militarizing technology, surveillance, weapons, information, dominance. Markets respond by dissolving regulation, digitization, abstraction, financialization, automation. Each escalation feeds the other. Both sides escalate using the same substrate, computation. It's not a conspiracy, but a convergence of sorts. Some may call it a singularity. I call it the omega point. Markets push innovation forward to escape constraint. States push innovation forward to regain control. Each move accelerates the other. And then cyberspace, like Land predicted, becomes the true battlefield, the only real battlefield, because it's the only domain where speed exceeds law, optimization, efficiency, eat, consume, live, die, repeat. Act 4, the technocrat invasion. Now, where do people like
Interesting stuff. All right, I'm gonna leave it at that though, because we could watch the whole thing, but you could go check this out. I'm interested. I'm gonna watch tomorrow. I'm gonna finish this one, but I'm gonna also watch that other one he was talking about, the Kabbalah thing. That sounds very interesting. About that being like the seed program, the seed code. And it's just weird how we were looking at the steganography stuff and how that was talking about encoding cryptographic information in a religious context, and then we're coming across all this stuff with the Kabbalah and everything. It's basically like the same kind of concept there. This is so interesting. Okay, I think I'm gonna leave it at that for tonight, guys, because man, that is some intense stuff. But yeah, check out that video, and I won't be streaming tomorrow night because tomorrow night's Sunday, so that's my day off from streaming. But I will be back on Monday, and I'm sure I'm going to have some really interesting stuff. I'm going to kind of go further into some of this too. This man, it's fascinating. Like, because like we had talked about this guy a little bit before, but I didn't realize like how deep all of this stuff actually was. All right. I'll see you guys Monday night at 8:30. Until then, have a good night, and I will see y'all later. See ya, KK. I mean, K-pop. Sorry, I almost. That was a weird Freudian slip there. Have a good night, guys. Talk later.